Welcome to the ReaderHouse Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm your host, Corey Graham. Join us here every Friday night at 8 p.m. or listen anytime via podcast at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, to name just a few.
This is a book dealing with one of history's most intriguing mysteries. It's titled Shroud Encounter, Explore the World's Greatest Unsolved Mystery. It's a book written by Russ Breault, and we're going to talk all about it. Russ is here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Russ, welcome to the show. Thank you for being with me tonight.
Thanks, Corey. It's nice to be with you.
It's great to be talking with you, and great to be finding out about Shroud Encounter. I'm really intrigued by this, Russ. Can you tell me about it?
Well, the shroud is the Shroud of Turin, kind of a mysterious 14-foot-long linen cloth. It's been in Turin, Italy, ever since 1578, and it was in France for another 250 years prior to that. And this cloth bears the faint image of a bearded, crucified man, about 5'10" in height. It's covered with blood stains that correlate with the stains of crucifixion as recorded in all four Gospels. And it's the most analyzed artifact in the world. And it's been subjected to thousands of hours of scientific analysis, which have been written up in dozens of peer-reviewed journal articles. And yet it remains a mystery.
Russ, what made you want to tackle the Shroud and write a book about it?
Well, I've been involved with the Shroud for years and years. You had a whole team of scientists go to Turin in 1978. A team of 33 American scientists have access to the cloth for 5 days and nights, working in shifts around the clock, 120 hours. And this was huge news back in the day. And in June of 1980, National Geographic published a big article about it. And I was a writer for the college newspaper at the time, and I asked if I could write some articles, and so I did. And so in the fall of 1980, a two-part article series came out, and then I was hooked. I did all this research, and so I've been involved in the Shroud for over 40 years.
Wow. Russ, what kinds of readers do you think would be really interested in this kind of thing?
I think readers who are intrigued by mystery, by archaeology, by apologetics, by science and history. This is a fascinating mystery story that traces back potentially 2,000 years. And, it traces back to medieval Europe, through the Crusades, back to ancient Constantinople, and even tracing back to ancient Edessa, and finally back to Jerusalem in the first century. It is a phenomenal artifact. And, the significance of it is, what if this cloth really is the actual burial shroud that wrapped Jesus in the tomb? That would be pretty earth-shaking. Now, right now, we would say that the preponderance of evidence would certainly indicate that, but we don't have the DNA of Jesus to match it up with something we might extract from the shroud. So we could never prove it absolutely, but we can certainly prove what it's not. And it's not the work of an artist. There is no trace of paint, ink, dye, pigment, stain. There's no artistic substances on the cloth to account for the image. There's no artistic process that we can determine. And you have a whole pattern of blood stains. Is it just paint? Is it animal blood? Is it human blood? Well, in fact, it is human blood from actual wounds, and it's called the exudate of wounds. And so the plot certainly thickens now. And so, from a Christian perspective, this is an amazing apologetic.
Russ, what does your writing background look like? Have you done this kind of thing in the past, or are you relatively new to it?
I've written plenty of articles and things and done numerous DVDs over the years, but this is my first book. There are many things that I wanted to document in terms of the either-or proposition, that either the Shroud of Turin is the authentic burial shroud of Jesus or it's not. And if it's not, well, then what is it? And so we explore the Shroud from that standpoint, and then we look closely at the results of the Shroud Project. And then we explore, if the Shroud is only medieval, as the critics would say, well, who was capable in the 14th century to have crafted this mysterious cloth without the use of any artistic substances? It's a fascinating mystery story. Amazingly, still remains unsolved even in the 21st century.
Oh, what an intriguing book. I think readers are really going to be into this. Again, it's titled Shroud Encounter, explore the world's greatest unsolved mystery. This is written by Russ Breault and published by Covenant Books, so find it at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and iTunes, also at traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Russ, thank you so much for coming on and telling me all about this book, about the shroud and everything that went into this. I had a nice time talking. Thanks again.
Well, thank you so much.
Jill Fandrich is joining me again here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. We get to talk all about her new book, Elevate Your Mind to Success. Take your thoughts to a higher level. Jill, welcome back to the show. It's always great to be talking with you.
Thank you, Corey. It's wonderful to be here. It's so nice to talk to you again as well.
I appreciate it. Jill, can you tell me all about Elevate Your Mind to Success and what readers will find here?
Sure. Elevate it's a transformational book. It's very motivational, and it starts with your thoughts. And I discuss about how where you are right now is based on where your thoughts are and the programming of your thoughts. And I take you back to who programmed your original thoughts. And if you don't like where you are right now, well, you can change that, but you have to start by changing your thoughts. So I talk about how to declutter your mind and identify where your thoughts are and where you want them to be. And it's a matter of reprogramming your pre-program. I get into different obstacles that come in along the way and how to overcome limiting beliefs. And I also provide resolutions to those obstacles and really help the reader develop a success-oriented mindset and even transferring energy from negative energy into positive energy. We really want to focus on that positive mindset. So I think it's a very, very uplifting book, very life-changing, and very thought-provoking book, changing your thinking and into a positive mindset and elevating your mind to success.
I know this isn't some new age mind over matter kind of thing. There's actually a lot of science behind what you're saying.
You're right, Corey. There is a lot of science behind it. And really, as I say, there's nothing new under the sun, but it's a matter of putting it all together and getting it in one spot and just redefining it, bringing it back up again, finding the right tools and strategies and skills to put it into place and to really acknowledge that these things exist and there is a way to change things. If you don't like where you are, well, then it's very possible to change it. You just have to get in the right mindset to want to do it and to have the right tools to be able to do it and be open-minded and let it all come in and absorb. And so many things are just reminders, but boy, I don't know about you, but I can use a good reminder every now and again.
Jill, what sorts of readers do you think would get the most out of Elevate?
I think anybody who is maybe looking to take another step in a different direction, or maybe not fully satisfied with where they are right now, or they really want to take off on a successful pattern, and maybe even somebody who is just not as happy as they'd like to be right now and looking for something more fulfilling. I think this type of book would help all those people and really anyone. I think it could take any person to the next level and really elevate their mind and get them in a good place with some positive energy, with positive vibration.
Jill, how did this book come about? What gave you the idea to be writing about this?
Actually, Corey, I was Forex trading. And in doing so, I was trying to spruce up on my psychology. And I did do a lot of reading in psychology. As you mentioned earlier, that there's so much science behind it. And I was just so intrigued about where thoughts come from. And the fact that most of our thoughts are pre-programmed by our parents, by our teachers, by the news, by books we read, by things we studied growing up. And unless you change those thoughts, really experience them yourself firsthand, everything else is third-hand information or maybe fourth or fifth. So this just really sparked something in me. And I was so intrigued thinking, I don't want somebody else to have programmed my mind. I want to know that my mind is filled with my own thoughts and where I want to go and where I want to be. So that book was life-changing to me. And I just started writing and new thoughts came to me. And then it all folded out in a pattern of all the steps to take to reprogram your pre-program.
Would you say then that this was an easy write for you, or were there some speed bumps maybe along the way?
Well, this was the first of 9 books that I've written, and I never considered myself a writer. I always hated writing. But once I got this idea in my mind and started putting it on paper, it became a very easy title to write.
Well, there is a wealth of information here. I know this is some powerful stuff, and a lot of readers are going to love it. Again, it's titled Elevate your mind to success. Take your thoughts to a higher level. It's written by Jill Fandrich and published by Covenant Books, so get it at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and also down the street at your local bookshop. Well, Jill, as always, it's been wonderful talking with you and learning all about what you have going on. Thanks again.
Thank you, Corey. It's a pleasure to be here.
Author Frank Easterling has written a new book that celebrates faith and patriotism. It's titled My Love for Jesus and the American Spirit, Song Potpourri, Song Lyrics, and Poetry. And we're going to talk all about this book. The author, Frank, is here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, and we're also joined by his friend Richard Rentala. Frank, Richard, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm glad to be there.
Well, the pleasure's all mine. Frank, can you tell me about My Love for Jesus and the American Spirit and what readers can expect here?
Yes, okay. It is a book that was written to encourage one to stand against anyone who might try to amend our God-given Bill of Rights. And, it's different stories about family, faith, country, and it's a collection of songs, poetry, of course, and short stories about family, faith, country, and God. And also, I've got a letter from President Bush when he was in office. It's in the book also. And Charlie Daniels, I got backstage with him. He signed my tickets to his show. And I went to the Fallen Heroes for the police officers in Florida, and that's in there in the book. So it's to support different things to touch people's hearts and give them hope and inspiration. It's got some of God's words in it, some of the scriptures, as well as short stories and faith, poetry, lyrics for songs and stuff. So,
how did the idea for this come about, Frank?
Well, it's been a God-given inspiration for this book that comes at where it's at now. And we wrote stuff along the way, and then we got a collection of it, and I went back through it, and then I revised some of the writings and got it in a categorized situation where it can be put into a book, along with pictures and also letters from, like I say, from the president and pictures from Charlie Daniels.
Frank, what sorts of readers do you think would really be into this? Who are you writing this for?
I'm writing it for anyone and everyone that needs to be loved, touched by inspiration of God, and also for our country and our nation. People to take a stand, encourage one to stand against anyone who might try to amend our God-given Bill of Rights. So it's a variety of people that I'm trying to reach out and touch in some way, fashion, or form to give them hope and inspiration.
What does your writing background look like, Frank? Have you done this kind of thing before, or are you pretty new to it?
This is the first book that I've done, but I have a bunch of other writings, of this sort, but haven't got, it together as far as I probably could have had at least 60 of these things or more, what I got in here, but I got a whole bunch of them. I just haven't got them all, out there.
And once you got started on My Love for Jesus and the American Spirit, clear up through when it was published and ready to get out there, how long of a journey was this for you?
Well, actually, it is a combination of years, but I started really on this endeavor, I'd say about 22. I might have started towards the end of 21 and around December, January. And I signed a contract with the publisher in November of 23. And so it's taken to this point, or this time now, from there to here, where we're at now, today. Also, I want to thank my friend Richard there. He helped editing with me on the editing of this book, back and forth to the publisher.
Now, Richard, can you tell me about that process?
Well, it was a tedious process. Basically, we just took we put the initial publishing, and then they came back with corrections. We made the corrections, and basically I just helped him to put it in electronic form and send it back and forth. He was the one who did all the editing, right? I did the keystrokes. And because I'm computer savvy, I was able to email things back and forth. Frank didn't have that capability. That's how I fit in. I mean, I'm just here to support his work. Frank and I have been friends a long time. We've collaborated on several things, music particularly. That's how we first met.
Again, it's titled My Love for Jesus and the American Spirit, Song Potpourri, Song Lyrics, and Poetry. It's written by Frank Easterling, and this is published by Christian Faith Publishing. So you can find it everywhere. Go on over to Amazon and Barnes & Noble or iTunes or traditional brick-and-mortar stores, and you'll be able to pick it up. Well, Frank, Richard, thank you so much for joining me tonight and telling me about everything that went into this book. I had a nice time meeting and talking with both of you.
And same here. Nice talking to you. Thank you so much.
There's an inspiring collection of stories in Martha Black's new book, I Heard the Tales on Christmas Day. And that's what we're going to be talking about right now here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Martha, the author, is with me now. Martha, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here with me.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Martha, can you tell me all about I Heard the Tales on Christmas Day?
I Heard the Tales on Christmas Day is a compilation of 20 different Christmas stories. Every one of them totally different.
Martha, what inspired you to write these stories, and what gave you the idea to publish them?
Well, I started writing the stories quite some time ago, and I didn't even think about a book. But the stories that I write, I feel like come from God. Like He dictates them to me, but it's like when I put my fingers on the key, He gives me an idea first. Then I put my fingers on the key, and like the story just flows. The stories that I wrote originally were just about Christmas, and soon I discovered that I had so many stories about Christmas that I got to thinking about a book. And then I went ahead and added a few more stories to bring it up to 20 stories.
Martha, have you ever written a book before? Have you ever been published before this?
I have 2 other books that have been published. One of them is called Views of the Cross and Tomb, and that is a book that has the views of 8 different people regarding the crucifixion and the resurrection. That would be, let's see, it would be God, it would be Jesus, it would be John, and oh goodness, I can't even think of all the rest of them. But anyway, it's a great book. The other one is called Little Missy. And Little Missy is about a girl with Guillain-Barré, and she was in bed, and her father was afraid she was going to die. And he asked her what he can do to help her. And she said, I need someone to spend time with me. So he finds a little girl, a girl the same age as her, and she comes in and tells her, I'm going to get you out of bed. And she said, how are you going to do that? And she said, with miracles, lots and lots of miracles.
Martha, what's it like when you finally get your first copy of the book in and you get to hold your book for the first time? What kind of feeling is that for you?
Well, I mean, anybody would be happy to see something that they have written in print. It's not my sole goal in life to do that, but it's great.
And when it comes to publishing the book, there's a lot involved in there when working with your publisher. Martha, what did you find the most challenging part of the publishing process?
Oh, goodness. Well, I'm 86 years old. I'm going to write until the day I die, but I'm not the greatest person in the world on computers. And so I had some issues with, things that I just didn't know what they were talking about. But it wasn't hard. It wasn't all that difficult. And we worked it out and got it all done.
And you're a published author, Martha. To you, what's the most rewarding aspect about that?
I feel like that I'm writing for the Lord. And so anything that comes out of what I write, I feel like the praise goes to Him. And that's the best thing I get out of it.
Now, you just said you're never going to stop writing. So have you given thought to another book and publishing another after this?
Well, I already have enough that I could publish several more. Just kind of run out of money. I've been writing for 50 years. I live here in a senior apartment called Evergreen, and every Thursday I read them stories. That just thrills me to be able to do that.
Martha, while you're writing, is writer's block ever something you have to deal with?
Absolutely never, because I don't even consider myself a writer like other people, because they say writers write. And so they're always pressing for something to write. I don't have that problem because I wait till God gives me an idea and then I write. I haven't ever had writer's block.
And I'm sure you've learned a lot along the way of publishing, writing all this stuff. Martha, do you have advice now that you could give to the first-time authors that are listening to us?
Well, if you could find the connection with God that would let you be able to write, then writing becomes such joy. It becomes such pleasure. It's never, ever, ever a burden. And so if your writing is, it's just a burden to you, I say don't do it, But if you can find joy and be thrilled about the things that you create, then I say go for it.
Great advice. Well, I think a lot of readers are really going to love this book.
I hope so.
Again, it's titled, I Heard the Tales on Christmas Day. This is written by Martha Black and is published by Christian Faith Publishing, So head over to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes, also traditional brick-and-mortar stores, and you'll be able to pick it up. Martha, thank you again for coming on the show and telling me all about this. I had a really nice time talking with you tonight.
Thank you so much for calling me. Appreciate it.
All the Wrong Roads. It's the name of the new book by Paul Armento, and it deals with how the author's life was altered through his drug use over the course of 50 years. And we're going to talk all about this. Paul, the author, is with me now. Paul, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Paul, I'm curious to learn about All the Wrong Roads. Can you tell me about it?
Well, approximately 2 years ago, my cardiologist explained that I went in there, I had a mild heart attack, and I went into the hospital to have it checked out. After they ran all my tests, they concluded I had congestive heart failure, a weak heart aorta, borderline diabetes. They found a lot of things wrong with me, I'm sorry. She said that I'd be lucky to live another 3 months.
Wow.
So I decided to grow up, clean up, and write a book about how stupid it was to waste your life in what now seems like the blink of an eye.
Paul, what sorts of readers were you reaching out to here?
I'm just trying to reach anybody who's been on drugs, who's trying to turn their life around, who's really in the bad situations. I mean, we all go through bad spots in our lives, and I'm just trying to help people to help them turn their lives around.
When it comes to writing, publishing, have you done this kind of thing before, or is this your first one?
This is my first time, sir.
Oh, congratulations. How long did this take you? Once you started on it, clear up through when it was published, how long of a journey was this for you?
It was a total year, just about a whole year, because it took me 3 months to write it. But the first draft was all over the place, so I had to rewrite it again, and they still told me I was still jumping around, so then I finally put it in order. The whole year process, so I ended up rewriting the book 3 times.
Wow. Yeah, there's the writing of the book, and then there's the publishing of the book, and there's a lot involved there. Paul, what did you find the most challenging part of that publishing process?
The money, of course, because my doctor told me I had to retire, so I couldn't work anymore. And since I was self-employed, I had no money for backup or savings or anything. So I was just coming up with money that took a while.
Well, after all that time and hard work, everything you put into it, Paul, that day finally came and you got All the Wrong Roads in the mail, your first copy, and you got to hold this thing in your hands. What was that like for you?
When you got the books in the mail, it was an amazing reality that I finally accomplished something in my life, and that was very important to me.
Looking down the road, have you given thought to maybe writing another?
Yeah, I have the second one up, but I need to become successful first. It's called Sequel to My Success. So that's my next one, but I need to be more successful than I am right now, so I'm working on it very hard.
I'm looking at the cover of All the Wrong Roads, and it's a great cover. Paul, can you tell me the thought that went into that design?
In the first chapter, it says, my father was the epitome of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And then because he raised me atheist my entire life, so I never believed in God my entire life. I just said, God covered you help people who need it, because I didn't believe at all. The amazing thing was, as I wrote my book, I had a lot of near-death experiences, and I realized that he had to have been there to help pull me out so many times that I realized that he'd been with me my entire life, and I never realized it. So that's why I put his face up in the corner. As for the road, that's just me going down a very dark road most of my life.
And now it's official. You're a published author, Paul. When you think about that, what's the most rewarding aspect of that for you?
Well, believe it or not, I had to go to the laundromat this morning, and this lady walks up to me. She goes, Paul, you're the author, huh? And I went, yeah. I guess I had talked to her months before about my book. And it was so rewarding for somebody to go, wow, in front of everybody. She goes, you're an author, aren't you? And I said, do you remember? She goes, yeah, we met in the restaurant a few months ago or something. And everybody just looked at me, and it was a pretty amazing experience.
Oh, wow. I'm sure you've learned an awful lot along the way of doing this for the first time. Do you have advice now that you could give to aspiring authors that are listening?
Oh, just sit down and start writing. That's what I did. I just sat down one day after I got out of the hospital. The next day, when I sat down and just started writing and didn't stop until I was done. And like I said, it was 3 months to write the first books. So every day I just sat down and wrote a little bit and just kept on going.
Did you ever hit a point where it got tough? Maybe you hit writer's block or something like that? You didn't know what to write next?
No, I just brought back all the stories through my life. Everything that's happened to me, just started writing them all down. And I didn't have a problem. The problem was, after I wrote it, was figuring out how to get it marketed, how to get it published. That was the biggest problem that I had. But I figured it all out.
Well, I think a lot of readers, a lot of people are going to be helped by this book, and I encourage everyone to definitely check it out. Again, the title is All the Wrong Roads. It's written by Paul Armento and published by Hawes & Jenkins Publishing. So find it at Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Paul, I really appreciate you coming on the show and telling me about all the wrong roads and everything you put into it. And thanks again for being here.
Thank you very much, sir.
There's a new historical novel set in World War II, written by Carla King. It's titled A Nightingale in Paradise. And Carla's with me here now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, and we get to talk all about it. Carla, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm excited to learn about A Nightingale in Paradise. Carla, can you tell me about it?
Well, as you said, it's at the beginning of World War II, and it follows a Navy doctor, Jonathan Richardson, through the attack on the harbor and things that follow. And it also follows a young woman, Anne Montgomery, and how the attack affects her and how it all brings her and Jonathan Richardson together.
Carla, would you say that fans of historical fiction in general would be the ones that would like this the most?
Yes, I would.
So where did the idea for this come about, the World War II thing and the plot and everything? How did those ideas come to you?
I've always had an interest in history all my life, especially U.S. history. And my late husband used to encourage me on any of that, and he would take me out to different places. And we actually visited an aircraft carrier, which is actually featured in the book, and things just started to move from there.
When it comes to writing, publishing, and everything like that, Carla, are you experienced in this, or is this your first time around?
Oh, this is my first time around.
Oh, congratulations. Getting that first one out there is the toughest one. It's a big deal, so good for you for doing that. How long of a journey was this for you overall? From when you sat down, started it, clear up when it was published and ready to go out?
It's been about 20 years, only because I was afraid of getting it published. It wasn't until my husband passed away that I was like, you know what? I can't live in fear all my life. And I went out and did it.
That's wonderful. And then after all that time and after all that work that you put into it, I could only imagine what was going through your head whenever that first copy came in and you were holding A Nightingale in Paradise in your hands for that first time. Carla, what was that like?
Very surreal. It still is kind of. I mean, the book, it makes me very happy, and I wish my husband could have seen it, so I hope he's proud of that.
And now that you're officially a published author, Carla, what would you say is the most rewarding aspect of that for you?
Actually, having seen it through and showing my daughter to follow her dreams.
I love it. Now there's the writing of the book, and then there's the publishing of the book. You hand your manuscript over, and you begin that publishing process. There's an awful lot involved in that. Carla, what did you find the most challenging part of the publishing end?
For me, it was designing the book, the book cover and everything. It was a little challenging to come up with exactly the right thing. The editing wasn't bad at all for me. I obviously enjoy writing, and I enjoyed going through my book again, although going through it so many times was a little rough.
I'm sure. Have you given any thought to writing another, maybe a sequel to this, or maybe something else?
Actually, I do have another that I am working on that is kind of a sequel. It's actually about another family member.
And doing this for the first time can be quite the learning experience. So did you pick up anything along the way that you might be able to throw out there for the aspiring authors who are listening to us?
Personally, just do it. Don't be afraid. Just do it. Because a lot of people get discouraged. Just do it. Don't be afraid of it.
Absolutely. Great advice. Now, Carla, when you sit down to write A Nightingale in Paradise or something else, is writer's block something that you have to deal with every once in a while?
Yeah, for me, I just stop and find something else to do for a little bit, and it usually comes to me later. Get your mind off of it and move on.
And when you do write, are you the kind of writer that has a time of day that you like to sit down and write, maybe first thing in the morning or late at night? Or are you the kind of author, kind of like me, that I just write whenever I can find the time or I feel that inspiration come on?
Whenever I can find the time. And having re-entered the workforce, I have to write in between when I'm working.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Whenever I can find the time. When I wrote this book, it was whenever inspiration hit, I would just go and write.
And oftentimes when you have a passion for writing, it often means that you'd like to read as well. Carla, would you call yourself a big reader?
Yes. Not as a child, though. I was dyslexic, so it was a challenge, but I love reading now. I have a very large collection of military history books.
Well, this sounds like such a great book. I know readers are going to love it. Again, the title is A Nightingale in Paradise. It's written by Carla King and published by Christian Faith Publishing. So it's available everywhere. You can go to Amazon, you can go to Barnes & Noble or iTunes, and even traditional brick-and-mortar stores, and you'll be able to pick it up. Well, Carla, thanks again for coming on the show and telling me all about this. I had a really nice time talking tonight.
Well, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
I'm looking at the new book by Alan E. Walter, and it's titled Stay Under Your Hat, Knowing What You Can Control. Alan's here with me now. We're going to talk all about this book. Alan, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here tonight.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Absolutely. I'm all interested in Stay Under Your Hat. Alan, can you tell me what this is all about?
Well, I originally wrote Stay Under Your Hat to clarify some issues about boundaries. I was working with a small group of convicted felons under the Probation Department of Northwest Georgia and trying to explain boundaries to one of the members, and they were not getting the issue. So I was just really sat there and thought, Lord, okay, give me some wisdom here. Give me something else to work with. And I had a hat sitting on a table, and I kind of felt that nudge that said, use your hat. And so I developed the concept of being able to stay under your hat and take care of what belongs to you and not creeping outside of that, trying to manipulate what doesn't belong to you.
What sorts of readers did you have in mind for this, do you think?
Well, largely the Christian church. This is really a call to believers in the Lord Jesus Christ as their Savior to be faithful with what they were created for.
Now, when it comes to writing and publishing, Alan, what does your background look like there? Are you new to all this?
Yes, I am. This is my first published book. It's quite a challenge to be a writer.
Absolutely. How long did this take you?
Well, from start to finish, it took roughly about 6 years.
And on the publishing end of things, there's so many hoops you got to jump through there. What did you find the most challenging part of that publishing process?
Probably the most challenging part was swallowing my ego and realizing that my grasp of the English language was not as great as I thought it was.
And then that day finally came after that 6 years of working on this, and you got your first copy in. You finally got to hold Stay Under Your Hat in your hands for that first time. What was that like for you, Alan?
It was really somewhat surreal. I had spent an awful lot of time working on the project, had taken a few months off from writing and worked through the process of editing. And then when the actual copy was in my hands, it was, is this real or was this just made up?
And now that you're officially a published author, what would you say is the most rewarding aspect of that for you?
Probably the most rewarding aspect is the fact that I've been able to put together something that I think can be beneficial to others. To the few reviews that I've gotten and words from readers, it's been very positive, and they have stated a number of comments about how it has helped and benefited their life, improved their walk with God, and just made their experience as a Christian become more viable.
Have you given thought to writing and publishing more down the road?
Yes, definitely. I'm toying right now with writing another book and sort of making a little series of Stay Under Your Hat with, and then expanding to other topics and subjects.
And doing this for the first time, as you well know, can be quite the learning experience. So is there anything you might have picked up along the way here, Alan, that you could throw out there as advice for the aspiring authors that are listening?
Be willing to listen and learn is the biggest thing. It is a humbling experience, very humbling experience. We have ideas and concepts of how life should go, what we want to produce, and not always how the other person receives it. And it's very, very important to recognize that people from different genre of life are going to read your book, and you need guidance in being able to know how to say what you need to say so that they can actually hear you.
Alan, I've found a lot of authors to be avid readers as well. What kind of a reader are you?
I'm more or less a sort of a spot reader. I will grab a book and it will grab my interest, and I will read diligently for weeks at a time to finish that book, and then I might not pick up a book for a month or so.
Well, this sounds like a book I think a lot of people are going to find a blessing, and if you're listening right now, I think you ought to go and check it out. Again, the title is Stay Under Your Hat, Knowing What You Can Control. It's written by Alan E. Walter and published by Christian Faith Publishing, so you can get it everywhere. Head over to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores, and you'll be able to find it. Alan, I really appreciate you coming on the show tonight and talking all about Stay Under Your Hat. I had a really nice time.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'd really appreciate the time and just have enjoyed visiting with you.
author Jack Williams' new book. It's an exploration of self-discovery and personal growth. It's titled The Question, a guide to answering life's most important question. And we're going to talk all about this book. The author, Jack, is sitting here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Jack, welcome. Thank you for joining me tonight.
Thank you, Corey.
Absolutely. Jack, can you tell me all about The Question and what readers are going to find here?
Well, it's a personal story about a process that I went through actually beginning back in 1993 when I was out jogging and I was listening to a tape. That's how long ago it was on principles. I knew what a principle was, but I looked it up anyway. And I said, it's a code of conduct. It's a standard. I said, it's kind of what you believe in. And I said, I've never taken the time personally to put in writing what Jack Williams believed in. So I got out a notebook, sheet of paper, and an ink pen at that time. And I started writing sentences with the two words, I believe, and just started filling in whatever came to my mind about any area of my life, and did that over a 6-week period and had 68 items on my original list. Was feeling pretty good about it, and I said, well, that's nice. I've got it in writing, but what do I do now? And so for the next 11 years, Corey, I read that every morning, Monday through Friday, before I went to work. And after doing that for 11 years, I switched to doing every Monday morning, reading it to start my week. So I'm 31 years into that exercise, and it had such a profound effect on me of laying out kind of the foundational beliefs, priorities, and values that I wanted to live my life on, that I decided I wanted to write a book about my experience. And so that's what it's all about. And it was a game changer for me. I just wish I had done it a lot earlier.
Jack, what sorts of readers do you think would be really into this?
Well, I went against every writer's guideline in terms of how you write a book. My brother had written a couple books and actually taught writing. And, of course, Big Brother didn't even consult him till afterwards. And, he asked me, well, who's your audience? And I said, well, everybody is. He said, well, then you got no audience. And I said, well, the reason I say that is we do have a pretty broad audience. I have taught this particular topic in a leadership class I do for high school students since 1993, and I've done it with, adult groups. So we actually, and people that have read the book, have been from high school age to senior adults, have talked about the impact it has. So, I know you're not supposed to write for that broad of an audience, but I think anybody at any time in their life can benefit from sitting down and understanding what their foundational beliefs and values need to be that are going to guide them.
Jack, is this your first time publishing, or have you done it before?
It is. This is actually the second edition of this book, but it's the first book, yes.
What's it like whenever you finally get your first copy in? You've been working on it, it's been on your computer or on paper in front of you for the longest time, and there, finally you get to hold it. Jack, what's that feeling like?
Well, it's hard to describe. Quite frankly, you get emotional almost thinking about it. It was a lot of work. Mine didn't take as long as some people because I actually had a lot of the pieces of the book actually written without writing a book. I had written a bunch of stories a long time ago. Somebody told me if you ever want to write a book, first thing I'd do is write every story you can think of. And I had done that, and I already had my I believe list, so it was a matter of how to put it together. So it wasn't quite as an ordeal as some people have in writing their books, but when you see that author's copy come through the mail and it's got your name on it, it's a pretty special time.
And being these were a lot of stories from your life and also your beliefs, was writer's block ever a thing you had to deal with?
It wasn't. Like I say, I had a file of just countless stories that, when I decided to write the book, I remembered about writing all those stories. But when I was writing the stories and filing them away, I said, I'll never use these. And I started pulling them out. And I was actually thinking about writing a business book, and that's kind of where I put the stories away for. But when I started taking them out, I said, well, I could use this with this I believe statement and this with this I believe statement. And so it really flowed very, very nicely. I never got into that writer's block problem that so many people do. And there's a lot of humor in the book. Unfortunately, most of it directed at the author. So, that kind of made it flow a little bit easier. It's a short read. It's 135 pages, so it's an easy read full of stories. And I wanted it to just kind of be a conversation between me and whoever picked up the book.
Well, again, the name of the book is The Question, a guide to answering life's most important question. It's written by Jack Williams, and it's published by Christian Faith Publishing, so you can pick it up everywhere. Head on over to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes, also traditional brick-and-mortar stores, and you'll be able to find it. And Jack, thank you again for coming on the show and telling me all about this. I had a nice time talking with you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to share.
Mental health care is being discussed in the new book written by Dr. Christine M. Silverstein. It's titled Wrestling Through Adversity, Empowering Children, Teens, and Young Adults to Win in Life. The audiobook edition just came out, and that's what we're going to be talking all about. The author, Christine, is here with me. Christine, welcome to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. I appreciate you being here.
Oh, you're very welcome.
I'm interested to learn all about wrestling through adversity, Christine. Can you tell me about it?
Well, it's all in the title, Wrestling Through Adversity, Empowering Children, Teens, and Young Adults to Win in Life, as you said, because I speak about how America is in a mental health crisis, our young people, and how they're having high rates of anxiety, depression, suicide, and drug addiction, and they don't have the skill sets to cope through stressful situations to become resilient in the face of adversity, which we need to remind ourselves adversity is our greatest teacher. So in my book, I promote mental health rather than treating mental illness. I teach what I call mindful toughness skill sets, such as self-hypnosis and others that athletes use to win on and off the playing field. I also teach other skill sets like mental rehearsal to envision yourself as a winner rather than as a loser, which some people think they are, and to pass the test when you think you're going to fail it. So my book is about achieving your goals through the use of the power of the mind.
Christine, what gave you this idea? What sparked you to sit down and say, hey, I got to start on this book?
Well, there were many things that occurred. And I think as I look back to when I started in March 2022, I was watching the TV and the negative news, and I learned about the mental health crisis then. We were still within the grasp of the pandemic, and it was exacerbated by it, our mental health crisis, and also the war in Ukraine and the school shootings and all these negative things. And I believed at the time that there is something you can do because I had worked with the age groups of children, teens, and young adults for over 25 years. And I knew that there were techniques they could learn early on in life so they could handle any adversity. So I began to write about my work and about this idea that I felt a strong obligation to write because I knew what to do to help others, to help parents, to help their children, to know what to do. It's like in situations like with school shootings, I've been on TV a couple of times explaining to parents what to do when their child is fearful of school shooting. So we need to know these things before they happen, not afterwards. And parents have to be educated as well. So I work with them to help their children to grow. And it's very essential, I believe, because these situations are continuing into 2024.
Absolutely. This is such important stuff. When it comes to writing and publishing and all of that, Christine, is this your first book or have you done this before?
Well, I did write a book. It was a long story, my dissertation at Columbia University. First, I wrote one on the history of psychiatric nursing that was rejected on the day of my oral defense. I think it was kind of a stigma by association. But then I rewrote another one in 6 weeks, and it was on the history of nursing science development. And so I published that, copyrighted it, and I actually received royalties ever since. So it was popular, and I was glad that I got it out there to the public because in the schools, they kind of hide the dissertations up in the high level of the library. Nobody ever sees them. So I took it out to the people, and it was the first history on nursing science development. So people are grateful for that.
Speaking of the audiobook edition, you've been used to reading all your words off the page this whole time, and suddenly somebody's reading your book to you and you're hearing it. What was that like?
Oh, that was amazing. I couldn't believe it because I edited it as I did, in the print book. But I heard this wonderful voice, and I did have the opportunity to have 9 auditions, and I picked Natalie's voice, which was so great. And when I heard her read my stories in particular, I thought, what a great story. And then I realized I wrote the story, and that was amazing to me.
Again, it's titled Wrestling Through Adversity, Empowering Children, Teens, and Young Adults to Win in Life. It's written by Dr. Christine M. Silverstein, published by the Audiobook Network. So go everywhere that you normally go to get your audiobooks, and you'll be able to pick it up, like Audible, iTunes, and Amazon. And Christine, it's been really nice talking with you tonight and learning all about this. Thanks again for being here.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Anda Shelida. That's the name of the new book written by Dennis Gibb. And Dennis is here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. we get to talk all about it. Dennis, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about this.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine, Dennis. I'm excited to learn about Anda Shelida. Can you tell me what readers are going to find here?
This is a book about a young man who at 13 has to confront what is humankind's greatest motivation and greatest fear. And that is he discovered at 13 that he can see when other people are going to die. Mm-hmm. It manifests itself in a black spot on a person. And the first person he sees it on is his best friend. And 30 minutes after he sees the spot, the young man is killed. And he goes through his entire life dealing with this ability which doesn't fit any rational explanation. It resists scientific study. He can't prove he has it, but every time he sees a black spot, somebody dies. And it's not natural death. It's always accident, disease, or violence at the point the spot occurs.
Interesting. Dennis, what sorts of readers do you think would be into this?
I think people who like a good story, just like a good story with a little bit of twisty psychology and philosophical bents to it. It's a story that focuses on a number of troublesome human emotions, suffering, the value of suffering, mythology, the hero's journey, and trying to find a philosophy of life.
How did the idea come about for this, Dennis? What was that spark?
The spark was actually a book I read about Daniel Boone. And the legend has it that when Daniel Boone was going across the Appalachians to explore Kentucky, he had with him a man from Western Virginia who had a reputation of being able to see the future. So I did some research on that and found out that that was true, and that among the Scots-Irish who immigrated to the colonies, there is a long history of people having this Anda Shelida, which in Scots Gaelic means the second sight. And strangely enough, it's almost always associated with men. There are some notable exceptions to it, but most of the people who have had this in recorded history have been men. And that is unusual in that this sort of a spiritual or occult thing it has been mostly identified with women, but in his case, it's fixed on men. And I thought that was fascinating. I started thinking about it, and I said to myself, so that was the 18th century. What would happen in the 20th, 21st century if someone had this with our greater dependence on science and rationality and logic? How would you deal with that in today's world?
And Dennis, are you an experienced writer, or is this your first time at it?
No, this is my second novel. My first novel was published in 2014. It has an unusual title also. It's called Exordium. That means the beginning of things. And it's a story of a young man who comes home from Vietnam physically and mentally wounded and enters the investment business. And it's a story of his first 20 years in the investment business and highly autobiographical.
Once you sat down, got started on Anda Shelida, Dennis, how long of a process was this, clear up until it was published?
It took me about 6 years.
And once it was all done, you opened up your mailbox that one day, and there it was, finally, your first copy. You got to hold it in your hands. What was that like?
It was really tremendous to see it be published. And, I have to admit, I've been insufferably proud of myself that I got the book published. It just felt tremendous to have people take confidence in your reading and in your writing and publish it. And, the reception has been very nice. It was a real boost.
And when you think about it, you're a published author now. What's the most rewarding aspect of that for you?
I think, there's a couple things. One is someone said that every year there's about 63,000 books published or in various forms, either by mainstream publishers or self-published. To be published by traditional methods is a real accomplishment in that kind of a venture. Plus, it's an interesting story. It was fun writing it. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about a lot of things writing it. And it was just fun doing it. And, I'm now almost finished with my third one.
Well, this sounds like a great book. I love the premise. I think readers will too. Again, this is titled Anda Shelida. It's written by Dennis Gibb and is published by Newman Springs Publishing. So get it at Amazon or Barnes & Noble, iTunes, or also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Dennis, it's been wonderful talking with you tonight. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. We hope to see you back here every Friday night at 8 p.m. or listen anytime via podcast at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, to name just a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.